Welcome guys, thank you for tuning in. This video will be about the lost ancient kingdom of Sintra. Sintra is known to be one of the most mythical places on this entire planet. It was the inspiration for many different locations in video games, and there have even been over 200 movies filmed here, most of them being about mythical topics. So much so that nowadays the city of Sintra has turned into a little bit of a tourist attraction. And very understandably so. There are so many beautiful pieces of architecture, like the Pena Palace, the Quinta de Requilera, and many more examples. But those are not necessarily for this video, although I do question how people with a horse and a buggy built something like that on top of a mountain. In general, I'm also want to refer to the entire area than just the town. It's also known as the Sintra Cascais National Park, and it spans over an area of over 145 square kilometers. And it's also one of the most western places in continental Europe. And that's important because, as many of you may know, I'm currently planning, and honestly just a couple of days away, to go on an expedition to find Atlantis for the next 3 months. And I'll be moving to the Azores for that. Now, this is important because part of, I've been doing a lot of research in this topic, and let's say, which is currently where I'm at when I'm thinking about Atlantis, that it existed first and foremost, and it was, I think, colonized. There were like some spaces all around like Europe and even Africa. But I do think a large part of it was in an island in the middle of the Atlantic. Which to me is very likely that the Azores are somehow the mountaintops of that sunken island. But regardless of the Azores are where Atlantis is or if it's somewhere else in the Atlantic, many people say that when Atlantis was destroyed, people fled to the east and to the west. Now, if people would have fled westwards from Atlantis, Sintra is one of the first places they would have encountered. And occupation of the area in Sintra goes back to at least 5000 before Christ. And the city of Lisbon, which is 40 minutes away from Sintra by train, is also one of the oldest cities in Europe. We found some pretty interesting things in the area, like the Sintra collar, which is now in the British Museum because, well, where else would it be? But it was created in 1000 BC, at least, that's what they say. Maybe it's older, who knows? But it's quite astonishing, it's great quality. The Romans also loved it there, and they built many things there, and I'll get into some more detail about that later. Another thing I find quite strange is the amount of Moorish revival architecture. I don't want to dive too deep into this in this video, but I do find it rather strange that the Moors occupied the area, were then defeated, and then the Portuguese built revival architecture to imitate the buildings the Moors would build. It's a stretch, but the Moors could have just built them and they've just been repainted in modern times. Whatever you think about that, it's just a personal suggestion. I find it quite strange. There's, the Pena Palace, which is this beautiful piece of architecture of Moorish revival architecture. And on the hill right next door, you have the Moorish castle. But it just, it's nothing like it. And the Pena Palace is Moorish revival architecture. It seems to me like, maybe someone was just a little generous with the naming of these places. But again, this is just my own thoughts. I'm not saying this is the truth. Now, secret societies have been a very big part in Portugal. But in this area specifically, there are places like the Quinta de Requilera, which is insane, and I really recommend you to visit it. Sintra in general, like the whole area, even the touristy parts, incredible. But the Quinta de Requilera, this is where like Freemason rituals have been taking place. People were initiated into the order here. It's a very just mythical place, and it's been like that for thousands of years. Because even when the Romans arrived, they called it the place of the sun, or the sacred mountain, or the moon mountains. But again, I don't want to get too much to the touristy side of things. I want to get off the beaten path. I want to show you what I've personally firsthand seen and photographed, and just walk you through that with my thoughts. Because those are the sites that aren't pushed on to be seen by tourists. And I found some very interesting things here. Let's start with water. That sounds pretty strange, but the entire area of the Sintra Cascais National Park is completely honeycombed with water tunnels. Now, if there are some bigger tunnels, I honestly think so. But you see these water tunnels absolutely everywhere. They have entrances, they look super old, and they even go into mountains. And I don't know how they would have done that. Like, they have perfect masonry. It looks somehow Cyclopean in certain orders, like Cyclopean walls in Greece, or Menician walls, I think they're also called. They look very similar to this, and they're just all over the area, and they go on for kilometers. I couldn't find a map. I've seen a map where they have the aqueducts in the area, and there's a connection from Sintra to Lisbon, like all in aqueducts. I think it's like 58 kilometers long. And even the Romans built aqueducts here, which also makes me question the age of it all. It's quite interesting. Now, I don't know how long they are. I don't know how many there are. I would love to see a map. If anyone knows someone that knows someone, or somehow has a map for the water tunnels in Sintra, please, I wish to see that, because it's crazy. And you can enter most of them, and I've done that, and like a couple, not all, of course. But they all kind of have the similar feature. They all look very similar, and they all kind of end at one point. Some kind of look like they have been like closed off. I don't necessarily have pictures of this, only of the entrances. Main reason is because there are like so many spiders and insects that like I just wanted to go like quick in and out, like run to the end and just like shit, blocked off, and then went back. But most end, I'd say, like after like 20-30 meters, there's like a wall. Now it could have been bricked off, because I just don't understand the system of it all. Maybe it's like a, I don't know, maintenance tunnel type. I'm not sure, but fact of the matter is the entire area is filled with tunnels. And you can even see that in touristy attractions like the Quinta de Requilera, which has so many tunnels beneath it. And the mansion, the Beaster mansion right next to it, same thing there. So I'm sure that there's so many tunnels, and really like handmade tunnels and caves beneath Sintra, as well as the walls in general. You find so many walls just randomly, like you walk through the forest and you just see a wall, and it looks super old. It looks like buried, like there's been sediment alongside, there have been trees growing on top. I don't know how old these walls are, and I guess that's also where it comes into play. Like, I just think that there has been a civilization in Sintra that has done a lot more than we think they've done. Another point is, and I mentioned this, but occupation of the area goes back to 5000 BC, and we have a megalithic culture all over the area. Now, there are only a handful of sites that are recognized, but if you walk through the forest, you see some very interesting looking rock formations with gigantic rocks. Just like this one, I explored it yesterday, and you see some remarks here and there, like, it's quite interesting. And now, I don't know if this is a megalithic site. I mean, on one hand, it does look like it has been collapsed in the middle, and all of these rocks and the way they're like, formed and informations, they look like they've been brought together and carried there. It's not like they're all over the place. It's like they are like mostly in one area and then around it. Like there has been something that has destroyed them. And there have been big earthquakes in the area, like in 1755. So I could see there having been more megalithic sites that are just not there anymore at this point. It also very much reminds me of sites like Bekliktash in Bulgaria. I visited Bulgaria last summer, and there were so many megalithic sites that look similar. Like even the type of rock looks very similar. But of course, both countries are quite far apart from one another. But it is interesting. It seems like you have the same maybe architects at play, or I guess like methods of construction. I don't know. It's pretty far back, but it's interesting how we have these megalithic sites everywhere. Maybe these are the survivors of a catastrophe that happened in the Atlantic. Now to the ruins. I found these ruins. They were off the beaten path. They are actually quite close to another tourist attraction, which is the convent of the Capuchos. Sorry, my Portuguese friends. I've been here for a year. I'm trying to learn Portuguese, but it's difficult, man. The pronunciation gets me sometimes. But that's besides the point. It's close to this tourist attraction, off the beaten path. And I mention this because they don't look anything alike. They're pretty close to one another, but the sites that we discovered and we explored a little bit, it's just nothing like it. And I don't really have an explanation for what it even is. Like, you couldn't really tell there's a solid building somewhere. It's just very great stonework, honestly. And you see that the mortar has been added more recently. And you see that from the back of the structure, like I took a picture of it here, of like a wall. And from the back side that's like not exposed, you see how these stones were actually stacked on top of one another. And it's not by mortar. It's just like the Cyclopean walls in Greece. No mortar, nothing. They just stand. And there have been earthquakes in the area, but they stand. And the mortar is actually quite cheaply done from the outside, and it doesn't really seem like it keeps the stones together, in my opinion. How old is this place? What was it? You have staircases going places that just don't lead anywhere. You have arches that don't go anywhere. You have walls that are so big that it looks like there's maybe tunnels beneath it. And we did find like a staircase down. Very interesting. But it was shut off completely. And I'd love to go there again and maybe do some more like proper research, like really get things out of the way. But yeah, for this time we didn't do that. But it just looks like it goes deeper into the mountain. And you have a couple of places on the site that just truly looks like there's something going on beneath it. I mean, the whole place looks buried in a way. And really, there's so many entrance points that just don't lead anywhere that it really makes me wonder what else was there at one point and what we even see today. If you have any idea what this is, like a palace or a castle, just a community, like a living place, let me know, because I'm just confused by it. But to me, giving everything that I've kind of said, like the megalithic culture, the waterways, the tunnels, just the mythical surroundings with it, it just seems like there was a part of time that describes a quite different history of Sintra. Like, there were people living there that built quite different, that built more extravagant, more ancient, and more powerful. And there's not much known about them. And finding ruins like that, I mean, of course, my inner child and my inner explorer was so excited. Like, you guys have no idea. I was ecstatic about this find. But it is quite crazy, like, what was there. And that's why I'm really making this video, because like I feel the adrenaline. It was just yesterday, but I'm just feeling like, man. And of course, like, now I'm going on the expedition to find Atlantis, but I just wanted to share this with you guys because it's so interesting to me. Such a mythical place described for thousands of years to be a place of mystery. And then you find ruins like that, walls everywhere, water tunnels that lead to mountains. And it's just fascinating. There are two more things that I wanted to say about that, and they're more on the outrageous alternative side. And I just want to throw those ideas around and just, bounce it off if you wish, say something to it. This is pure speculation. First speculation I have is somehow based on a fact, or I guess, I don't know if I'd call it a fact, but I was hiking up the mountain that goes to the Moorish castle. That's the official name. And there's a sign there that said that most and majority of every plant and tree that we see in the area has been planted by man, which is crazy. So just imagine this area of 145 square kilometers being planted by mankind and not being natural. That's crazy. So is it a huge garden? Like, is that the reason why we have walls and like water systems everywhere? You know, because then it's like Portugal's pretty dry, but Sintra is always green. It doesn't matter when. Because you have a lot of water running around, but maybe these ancient water, I'm saying ancient because I truly do believe them to be ancient. Maybe these ancient waterways were just a like system to keep the plants alive. And it was done so that it wouldn't dry out, so that you really have a gigantic garden. And that sounds crazy because it's just the scale of it. But I do think it's possible. So that's quite interesting. The second thing I have is that potentially the hills that we see are pyramids. I know what that sounds like. Nothing, it's just like the Bosnian pyramid type stuff. Even if you look at the hills from the outside, they don't necessarily look pyramidical. I mean, kinda, but I feel like every hill somehow does. But why I'm saying that is just because, you have places like Cholula, which I've recently made a video about. So imagine there are just pyramids there, and that we now see as these natural hills that were made of this megalithic stonework and have then been just overgrown completely. And there have been palaces and sanctuaries built on top of it. But I do think there's a part of Sintra history that is forgotten and that is soon to be reburied, And I think the more we investigate, the more we think about these things, the more we can come to a clearer answer to our human past. And that's all I try to do, I'm not out here, again, just trying to say this is how it is. I'm suggesting things, I'm asking questions. So I'd love to hear your feedback, and thank you so much for watching. And I hope you stay tuned for the next expedition when we go to the Azores for 3 months to go find Atlantis. Thank you guys so much. Namaskar, and have a beautiful week. Thank you.